Hello. Okay. I don't know if I'm in frame or not. Fuck it. Hello. Fuck it. Hello, viewers. My name is Zack Hardy, and this is my review of the USW pay-per-view Insanity 2018, otherwise known by a lot of outside fans as Royal Rumble Light, and a lot of hardcore fans, especially those who are in depth with USW, as the more lucrative Royal Rumble. Essentially a pay-per-view that took place last night. I know I'm late to the whole review and everything like that. I've had a busy day, full of streaming and writing out shit. But nevertheless, we have a couple of things to talk about in this pay-per-view, more so than I think we've had to talk about in terms of negativity with a USW product since, I don't know, maybe this point in time last year. Overall, a couple of big returns, some that may be a one-time only thing, some that may be permanent from here on out, and also the question of whether USW has already ruined Mr. Anthony's character. And on top of that, a match of the possible match of the year candidate, World Championship matches galore, pushes in favor of specific mid-carders, and let's just get into it. So overall, USW's Insanity 2018 pay-per-view was, I would suggest, as an outside fan, which is how I'm reviewing this, not as one of the performers, but as a fan of USW, I would say this was not the strongest pay-per-view showing to show someone in terms of this is exactly what USW is. Don't get me wrong, there were great matches on the card, but for a Big Four pay-per-view, you know, you have Warzone, Bulletproof, Call to Greatness, and Insanity. For a mainstay pay-per-view where both brands collide on the same show, I expected a little bit more from Insanity. Now, don't get me wrong. That is not to say that Insanity 2018 was a bad show, because I do not believe personally that it was a bad show. I know there are people that would and people that wouldn't, and you know, everybody has their own opinions, and I'll leave that to yours. But in my opinion, it was not a bad show. It just did not live up to what I would hope it would have been. You know, this is a pay-per-view that is supposed to be, out of all pay-per-views in the year, one of the main ones you'd show somebody that wants to get into USW. And with that being said, you want to put your best foot forward. And I don't think USW really did that, which is sad and really sucks. But, you know, I personally expected more. Then again, it wasn't a bad show again, but it was just something that was a lot more disappointing than it should have been. And I can talk about that for ages, but the big headlines to take away from Insanity 2018 are the following. Simon Saint has returned to the company. Dustin Raymond has returned to the company. Western Light came out of retirement for a one-off appearance in the Insanity match. There is a match of the year candidate on our hands. Is Chris Ross going to be treated like a formidable world champion in the weeks to come? I don't know. James is in line for a huge main event push. Carver and Philip Akron are continuing to go. Suzuki Kirikashi and the Promised Land are set to have a big year. And on top of all of that, the big question that you took away from USW that you rarely, if ever, hear involving a USW show or a USW or a part of USW's product is, has USW ruined a specific performer's credibility, so on and so forth. Now, of course, you hear that all the time with, oh, they're not using Alexander Rotten correctly. They're not using Chris Ross correctly. They're not using Mika Jordan correctly, Dwayne Porter correctly, so on and so forth. But I don't think there's ever been this much of a discussion over whether USW did the right thing or not. And with that decision ending the show, it may have affected viewers' overall opinion on the show and possibly left a bad taste in their mouth, which is never something you want to do. Then again, it was an all right show, but all right does not or is not good enough for one of what is supposed to be one of your best shows of the year. We're going to get to it straight off the bat with the kickoff match. It is a match from the Intensity roster. Fernandez and Gringo against Prophecy and a partner of his choosing. Now, the feud up for a couple of weeks was Prophecy beat Fernandez in a one-on-one match. Gringo attacked him, and they've been using the numbers game against Prophecy for the entirety of this feud, calling themselves the Marvelous Ones. So it's more of a kind of self-obsessed gimmick for Fernandez and Gringo, which I like because it gives a dimension to their characters. But they wanted to prove that they could be on equal ground with Prophecy, and they allowed him to pick a tag team partner. So Fernandez and Gringo make their entrance. Prophecy makes his entrance, points to the entrance ramp, and then you see Simon Saint come back to USW for the first time since, I believe, 2016 when he left. And he is shown to be Prophecy's tag team partner. All well and good. Very interested in that. He changed the spelling of his name has been changed from Simon Saint of SIMONST period to SIMONSAINT. So I guess there's that extra kind of emphasis on, we're going to branch away from what his character was a couple of years back and kind of try to build him up once again. Overall, decent match. Great way to start off the show. It was one of those matches that kind of got you interested in the card, got you ready for whatever happened next, and it wasn't something that would take you away from whatever the next match was, where you'd be too drained of life, but at the same time, you'd go into the next match excited to continue going down the card, because you'd, of course, as a wrestling show goes, you expect it to continue going up and better and better and better from that point on. So overall, just a pretty good in-ring match. You had the great storytelling of Fernandez and Gringo targeting Prophecy while he was in the ring, taking control of this tag team environment, keeping him in their corner for the majority of the match, which is something that I don't believe they did a number of years ago when they were originally a tag team. They kind of just had a more loose-tempoed style, but now they're kind of bringing them into the corner. They're utilizing the numbers game against them. So overall, you've seen the maturity in the two as a pairing going forward. And so the intensity of the match picked up really well. You got the audience intrigued. They wanted to see Simon Saint in the match. And the more Fernandez and Gringo kept Prophecy in their corner and kept him from making the tag, the more and more the crowd wanted to see Simon Saint until they eventually made that tag. Simon Saint went in, ripped through Fernandez and Gringo. Prophecy, I believe it was Prophecy that knocked Gringo out of the ring, allowing Simon Saint to hit the, I don't know what it was called, Saint Street or something like that, on Fernandez for the cover. 1, 2, 3. Prophecy and Simon Saint win this match. Now, one big thing that I wanted to mention after I talked about the match was the stipulation going into the show, because a lot of people forgot about the stipulation, and I don't know whether it was dropped from the match or not, but there was no mention made of it throughout the entirety of the match, and that was that if Prophecy were to lose this match, he would become the personal assistant of Fernandez and Gringo, and they made no hint to that at any point in the match. The match card promo package or picture package did not see that stipulation anywhere on the line, so I don't know if they dropped it or not, but that's the big reason for why I wanted to talk about that after I discussed the match, because if you forgot about it going into the match, and you're only reminded of it now that I'm talking about it after said match, then it kind of shows just what a oversight it was. So I don't know if they pulled it from the card or if they felt this problem was going to occur somehow, some way, shape, manner, or form. But they did something and took the stipulation away and made no mention of it. So for whatever reason that they did it, I have no clue, but I'm hoping maybe we see some kind of further development down the line. And I really hope this isn't one of those cases where they just kind of forgot that stipulation existed, because they've done that a handful of times in the past where they've kind of just forgotten about a stipulation or added it out of the blue and made zero reference to it until the point in time in the match was made to mention that. So I hope it was not just an oversight by the creative team, but Nevertheless, decent match, 3.25 out of 5 stars, and a great opener to the show. The next, in chronological order of the show, the next thing that came up was a backstage segment, in which case Roseline was setting up for an interview with the Red Belt champion, Anarchy, until Kyle Reese Jr., who over the past number of weeks has kind of been this absolute douchebag. You know, he's seen Rose in the backstage area, and he's talked about how, oh, you're one of the only women that is in this company, and you're an interviewer, so it looks like you're on the right warpath. He's added those little remarks and insults that make you just go, you're a fucking douchebag. And so it's kind of become where it feels like more sexist. Like he feels superior for some reason because this is a man's world. And this is supposed to signal the decline in fan favorability of Kyle Reese Jr., who, as you know, in reality is the owner of USW, but storyline-wise is the commissioner and general manager of the Wednesday Night Intensity brand. So to see Roseline, who is an interviewer for specifically the Wednesday Night Intensity brand, being belittled by the commissioner and general manager of the Wednesday Night Intensity brand, it's supposed to spark something going forward. And this was, you know, made very apparent when USW champion Zack Hardy, yours truly, walked into frame and kind of told Reese Jr. off, kind of signifying either that bond, a bond with Roseline, or a somewhat alliance with Roseline, and at the same time some dissent between himself and Kyle Reese, because over the past few weeks, it was kind of a case where, considering I wasn't always on the Intensity episodes, you know, most of my promos would be through via satellite or pre-recorded, and I would kind of talk a little bit more down of Kyle Reese Jr., so I assume that's going to set something up going towards the future. Mind you, again, I'm not talking as Zack Hardy, I'm talking as a wrestling fan. You can't make that any more apparent, but that is supposed to signal some kind of dissension within the ranks of the general manager of the Intensity brand and the man responsible for the existence of the Intensity brand. So while one is an authoritative figure and another is essentially an employee, morally they're both in equal importance, because the owner, one is the owner of the company in real life, the other is the reason for why that company exists to begin with. So it's kind of like this clash of power where anybody else wouldn't be able to get away with running their mouths off to their employer, but considering it's Zack Hardy, one of the faces of the company and the world champion of the Intensity brand, it's something that is supposed to show, all right, well, if there's one guy that can stand up to the boss, it's this guy. So that's going to, you know, probably going to set up something going towards the future, maybe into the Call to Greatness environment, or kind of the Call to Greatness road or journey, whatever it may be. And it's kind of this case where now we have a triangle, and it's Reese Jr., who is becoming just a loathable heel instead of a tolerable babyface, and Zack Hardy and Roseline. So it's kind of like a multitude of different things can happen over the next couple of months, and it's very interesting to see how that plays out. The next match is a severity match between Crimson Red and 1/3 of the Promised Land, Tanner Wallace. Now, Blaine North was taken out of action 3 weeks ago on severity, where I guess it was just a simple chop block to the leg, and storyline, or kayfabe-wise, he injured his knee, blew something out or whatever. I don't know how they described it, but long story short, Blaine North is out on injury, kayfabe-wise, and Suzuki Kirikashi can't be in Tanner Wallace's side because he has an international championship title defense later on in the show, and that tends to be the case of where they go with things. You know, if one of the members of the faction has a match later on, they're not at ringside, and whomever else is left can join or not join and support or not support at any point in time. But with Blaine North out and Kirikashi having a match down the line, Tanner Wallace is all on his own to represent the Promised Land against Crimson Red, whom he and and former Blame North attacked at the end of their match at USW Aftershock a number of weeks ago. So it was a shorter match, and the story was kind of there. Crimson Red is looking for retribution. Tanner Wallace is looking to represent his group, his faction. And there was a really great spot where Crimson Red went for his signature, I guess, starfish splash. And it was countered by Wallace into a sidewalk slam. And he got a really close near fall, but it hurt the back of Crimson Red. So throughout the match, he would sell that back injury that he got really early on in the show. So that kind of played into the rest of the show. And Crimson Red would try to start attacking at the leg of Tanner Wallace, but Wallace would overpower him to the point where at least his leg was not majorly damaged. He wasn't taken too far off of his game, and pinned Crimson Red for the victory before any more damage could be done to the leg. And on top of that, representing his faction of the Promised Land even further forward. So this was a decent match. I think it could have gone on a little bit longer. I personally am not favorable of 10-minute or less matches, even though you can get a lot done in 10 minutes. I like when a story is stretched out in the ring. And I didn't like the fact that it was cut down so short. I did like the fact that Crimson Red tried to target the leg, and Wallace was able to end the match before Red was able to damage his legs so, too badly. So I hope that goes on somewhat further in the following severities and pay-per-views to go forward. So that's something that I liked very much. 3 out of 5 stars. I think it suffered from being so short. But then again, it was kind of a case that they had the Insanity match and one of the World Championship matches. I won't get into it yet, but went for almost 40 minutes. So they needed to kind of cut down the rest of the card because they knew what matches needed to be extended and what the timing needed to be in order to get the show to a point in time where they knew what was going on and when it had to be done, whatever. So that's that. Next up, we have a backstage segment with Martin Reese Kyle Reese Jr. walking into Martin Reese's office. So you have the commissioner and general manager of Wednesday Night Intensity, or the Wednesday Night Intensity brand, and the commissioner and general manager of the Friday Night Severity brand, both in the same office at the same time, and they are just kind of bickering like brothers do, until Kyle Reese Sr. walks into the office. He makes sporadic appearances, and he always gets a pop because everybody loves him, especially now that they don't see him as often. So Kyle Reese Sr. walks in, Reese family reunion, they kind of talk a lot. Martin Reese is credited with being able to make Severity such a land of promising talent with a multitude of different things going well for Severity. And Reese Sr. Playfully talks to, or brings allusion to the fact that Severity is beating Intensity in weekly viewership ratings. And so Reese Jr. just brushes it off like it's nothing. Intensity is the main brand. It'll be perfectly fine. And Reese Sr. looks at him and goes, well, I'm sure this Intensity brand will be perfectly fine, but it probably won't be thanks to its leader and the man in charge. And Reese Jr. asks him what that is alluding to. And Reese Sr. just goes, well, you're the one guy that is supposed to be the face of the company, or it was supposed to be the face in charge of the company. You were, the story is very well known. Kyle Reese Sr. ran WOW. When USW launched, he enforced Kyle Reese Jr. as the owner of the company. So it kind of comes down to a case of you from the beginning were supposed to lead this company, but now you're just turning into a pathetic asshole. And he uses those words exactly. He goes, you were supposed to lead this company. You were entrusted with the Intensity brand and to make it something. And not only is your brother beating you in your own company with his own show, but you just turn into a pathetic asshole. And I sincerely hope you change your ways. And then he shakes his son, Martin Reese's hand, and just goes like this to his other son, Kyle Reese Jr., and walks out. Reese Jr. is visibly annoyed, or you can visually annoyed, And Martin Reese Jr. just goes back to his chair and sits down before Reese Jr. walks out of... Martin Reese goes back to his chair before Reese Jr. walks out of the office very upset. So dissension in the ranks of the Reese family as well. This is definitely playing into some bigger overall storyline. And I think this is the kind of point in time where you realize, all right, Kyle Reese Jr.'s, this is a heel turn. We're moving into the realm of he's a full-on bad guy. There's no favorable crowd reaction. It's just a case of how is this going to proceed? How is this going to go further down the line? So that was, great storytelling and very well done. And that's that. Next match is an intensity match, and it is for the Blue Belt Championship. It is Tyreek Carver, the new Blue Belt champion, or I'm sorry, not the new Blue Belt champion, but the Blue Belt champion since Bulletproof, defending against former mentor Philip Akron. This match was great. It was hard-hitting. It felt like there was this genuine animosity between the two. Akron sold Carver's just his take on, I'm a man of my own now, I don't need you, very well. There were points in time where Carver would be down in the match and Akron would yell at him, you still need me, I made you. And that it was just that mind game that Carver had put into Akron's mind of, I don't need you. And throughout the match, Akron trying to prove, you damn sure need me, because without me, there'd be no you. So that tends to be something that's been thrown around very, or somewhat consistently now. I've used that many times throughout my past couple of promos, especially with Hernastly. And Philip Akron using it in this match with verbal insults added an element to the story. And it really kind of showed Tyreek Carver to be more of a babyface. It kind of showed Carver as the babyface, which is surprising because I'm pretty sure everybody thought after Philip Akron dropped the Blue Belt Championship to Tyreek Carver at Bulletproof, it was going to go a different way, like the exact opposite way. Like Carver would be the bad guy and Akron would be the babyface that everybody kind of felt bad for. So to take this kind of turn of either Carver being a smart and witty heel and Akron just being an emotional babyface, it just feels very heavily like Tyreek Carver is the heel, or I'm sorry, is the babyface, and Philip Akron is the heel. And I don't know if that's trying to play into something. I've heard reference on how USW has thought they want to change what they've done over the past few weeks a little, just very slightly. So if it could be a case where the original intent was to make Philip Akron the babyface and Tyreek Carver the heel, perhaps they had a change of thought and went, no, I think maybe Akron is better suited for this heel role, and we'll see how Tyreek Carver can do in a face role. So I don't know whether that was the decision ahead of time, and they wanted to kind of change up the direction of both performers just a little bit, or if it was just simply this heel mentality that Philip Akron has had since he became the Blue Belt champion, all the way at, I think it was called the Greatness 12, so back in last April, that he's been this deterrable heel that is just dominant and talks down to his opponents. I don't know if it's possibly Philip Akron meaning to be the face, but still having those heel tendencies because he's not yet far enough removed from his heel run to the point where it can just be full-on determined babyface. But it added an element to the match that made you think, gave you something to think about, and gave you something to take with you, whilst also making it impactful and giving the match another dimension to enjoy. And overall, the hard-hitting nature of it proved that there was the possibility between both performers to make it feel like there was this genuine hatred and animosity buildup between the two of them. And USW does this perfectly. When there is a program and it feels genuine, it feels natural, not artificial, not just like this written up, kind of scratched up together kind of post. I like that. I love when it feels genuine. Like you feel like there's a hatred between these two, or there's a mutual respect but drive to be better than the other kind of program. I love those. And this genuinely felt over the course of the match from start to finish like it was progressively going towards these people genuinely do not like each other. And I love that. So even though this match was fantastic and could have been, either way you look at it, could have been a perfect send-off to the program and Philip Akron into the World Championship picture, or it could have been this perfect bridge that could bring both performers into the Call to Greatness season with momentum. Because now Philip Akron and Tyreek Carver, I personally, from what I took away from the match, I don't know which is the face and which is the heel. So that leaves me intrigued towards what they do farther down the line to see if, okay, I don't know who's the face. I don't know who the heel is. I don't know who the face is. I don't know who the heel is. I'm going to stay tuned to find out. So that is what I really loved about the match and what I really liked when it came down to storytelling throughout both men. It was just fantastic. And right till the end, I was glued towards, I know Tyreek Carver is going to win, but I want to see what the outcome of the match is. Because perhaps after the bell rings, there's an attack. Perhaps somebody runs in and starts a new feud with one of the members and the other goes their own separate way. I don't know. And I was very invested, and that was fantastic. I loved it. 3.75 out of 5 stars. Really, it felt genuine. It felt like both of these performers wanted to hurt each other, and you had reason to. Carver wanted to prove, I don't need my mentor anymore. The mentor, and Akron, the mentor, wanted to prove to his protege, you still need me, because without me, you wouldn't be in this position. So I loved that. 3.75 out of 5 stars again. Brilliance. Next match was a severity match. It was for the Global Championship. It was Eli Kaner, the former Surf from the Surf and Tanner tag team, against Lone Wolf. And somebody brought this to my attention a couple of weeks ago. And I hadn't really given it too much thought as I go to adjust my cock and it falls out of the hole in my underwear. That USW has somehow mastered the art of repackaging. And I was talking to one of the fans. His name was Hoyt. And no, not Zachary Hoyt. His name was Hoyt. And he has been following USW since it launched. And he said the one thing that I've noticed that nobody really talks about is that USW has a perfect track record in repackaging someone into someone of credibility. And I was trying to think to myself, some examples. And so I asked him what he had to back that up. And he said, well, back in 2015, Haven turned into Mika Jordan. And it allowed him somehow to show his strengths inside the ring. And while he hasn't been used properly, he is one of those guys that even without being used properly over, I guess, half a year now, even though he's involved in the mobocracy, it's a case of, this guy could still be one of the future faces of the company. And then he goes on to say, and then you have Surf and Tanner. So Tanner got repackaged into Tanner Wallace, who is now part of the Promised Land with Blaine North and Suzuki Kirikashi, and Surf transitioned into Eli Kaner. And then, he mentioned that, and I immediately went, that makes sense. Mika Jordan has so much potential that he could absolutely be a face of the company tomorrow. Tanner Wallace is thriving in the Promised Land. He is a part of the Promised Land with Blaine North in the tag team division. He is a force, and they will absolutely win the World Tag Team Championships this year. I am going to put my money on that. And then Eli Kaner is now in line for a push. And I don't know if it was because, Haven was originally supposed to be this dark, gloomy character, and Surf and Tanner were supposed to be these surfer dudes that were just dominant in the ring and had, an extra dimension to them. But Mika Jordan was able to branch out and make his own name. and so were Tanner Wallace and Eli Kaner in separate ways. And I think, I don't know, but Hoyt he was on to something, man, because I can't. I mean, although those are the three major shows of a repackaging from USW, because I don't think, other than Haven to Mika Jordan, Tanner to Tanner Wallace, and Surf to Eli Kaner, I don't think there's been a major repackaging of note for on USW. But however it may be, that maybe there's something to that. Maybe a repackaging is all USW needs to kind of build up somebody. So I'll keep that in mind. But boy, if you're watching, thank you for giving me that little piece of information to take in. I'll definitely keep that in mind the further I see, USW run down the line. So thank you for that. But going back to the match, Eli Kaner defended the Global Championship against Lone Wolf, and this was probably the one match on the card where going into it, you thought, all right, I think we definitely know who's going to walk out the champion. But at the same time, you kind of felt, well, it wouldn't be so out of the ordinary for Lone Wolf to win it. Even though you kind of assumed, yeah, Eli Kaner's going to walk out with a global championship and move on to another opponent, you kind of thought, well, it's not like it would be this absolutely disdained idea to have Lone Wolf walk out with the title. After all, the global championship is being built as the stepping ground up towards the international championship. So I liked that case there. That was an interesting thing to kind of take going into the match. Now, I think it's another one of those matches that should have gone on a little bit longer. I think it was cut down too short on time. I think Lone Wolf could have gotten more in towards the end. I think there was one spot in the match where Lone Wolf was on the top rope after throwing Eli Kaner off, and Eli Kaner was on his back, and Lone Wolf hesitated, got to the top rope, and then pointed to the crowd, had them get more involved in the match, and then go for an elbow drop. I thought it was really stupid to taunt when you had this opportunity right there to put a dagger right to the heart of Eli Kaner. So not really proven Lone Wolf to be one of the smartest competitors in that match, but it was a decent match for what the time that it was given. I had this written down as 3.5 out of 5 stars. I'm going to delve it back a little bit to 3.25 out of 5 stars because I feel like it could have been given another 5, 6, 7 minutes and had a little bit more made of it. Then again, it was one of those matches on the card like Tanner Wallace and Crimson Red that you'd probably expect to be on the main half of the show, and technically it was right there in the middle, but it was definitely one of those matches that I think could have been better wrestling-wise if it was given another couple of minutes. But overall, it was really something that won't matter too much going down the line, at least in my opinion, because I think Lone Wolf's going to go off and do something else after this match, and Eli Kaner is just going to continue to valiantly defend the Global Championship going forward. So I had it originally at 3.5 out of 5 stars, but I'm going to go and delve it back to 3.25 out of 5 stars. And, of course, if you don't know already, Eli Kaner defeated Lone Wolf to retain the championship. And from what I see, and this is something that has been kind of consistent because they've been booking the championship strong, not a single new champion was crowned throughout the night. And that's a spoiler alert, but Carver beat Akron, Kaner beat Wolf, Kirikashi beat Atomic, Anarchy beat James, Ross beat Morbid, Hardy beat Hernastly, and really from here on out, it's all championship matches. So that is something that I saw going forward. Maybe if a championship changed hands, Insanity would be a little bit more of a credible top 4 show. But this year, it really didn't do the best or the most for me. But anyway, I'm sure that Chris Ross, even though he's more than likely a transitional champion towards somebody going into Call of Greatness, and hopefully he's given something good to work with. But I think Chris Ross is more than likely not going to walk into Call of Greatness as the world champion. I think Zack Hardy isn't going to walk into Call of Greatness as the world champion because you already see the puzzle pieces aligning for a Zack Hardy versus Kyle Reese Jr. feud. But at the same time, if that doesn't go through, Zack Hardy versus Hernastly rematch, because that match of the year, possible match of the year candidate, is something that I think should or would be able to headline a Call of Greatness event. So I think primarily because Chris Ross is more than likely a transitional champion, but I'm hoping they do more with the Mobocracy going into Call of Greatness. So there's a more evident and apparent spot on the Call of Greatness card for Chris Ross. So I think he can do something else without being world champion that involves more of the Mobocracy to kind of help establish all the individuals in that group. And with Zack Hardy, I think it's a case of there's so much more that he can do going into Call of Greatness that somebody else can benefit more with the USW Championship going into the show. So aside from Ross and Zack Hardy, I think Anarchy's going to walk into Call of Greatness with the titles. I think Kirakashi's going to walk into Call of Greatness with the titles. With the title. I think Eli Kaner's probably going to walk into Call of Greatness with the title. And I think they're going to keep their cards on Tyreek Carver and have him go into Call of Greatness with the blue belt title. So overall, I think the two world champions right now will not go into Call of Greatness with the titles. Even though, I would hope something good would be done with them. But I think everybody else, I think it's more of a case of this is just a slow build to Call of Greatness. And while it may feel like it's dragging on at some points, USW keeps you in there. And at Call of Greatness, they'll make an impact. But you can definitely tell it's Call of Greatness season by the champions retaining and major storylines starting the burn towards Call of Greatness, and I love that. So, 3.25 out of 5 stars for Kaner versus Lone Wolf, and Kaner walks out still the global champion. Next match is for the International Championship, and I essentially spoiled the winners for the rest of the card, so my apologies. But it is Suzuki Kirakashi defending against Austin Atomic. And I have a couple of interesting things to give my mindset on about the performers in this match. Atomic, Kirakashi, they've proven they can put on a killer fucking match. My problem, not so much with Suzuki Kirakashi, my problem with Austin Atomic is, and I put the blame solely on the Severity Creative team's shoulders. Since Call of Greatness of fucking last year, 9 months ago, Austin Atomic has a match that I would say rivaled Kenny Omega versus Kazuchika Okada 1. I don't think it was as good as Kenny Omega versus Kazuchika Okada 2 or number 2. But I think it was right up there with contention for match of the year, at least in the second position, with Omega and Okada 1. And Majiketa was booked strong going forward up until the assault charge that I don't know if it was dropped or just never filed, but long story short, he punched a fan in the face and got suspended for it. Total lack of discipline on his part, and I put the blame on his shoulders. But Austin Atomic, not even just from his showing at Call of Greatness. You know what? This is going to be fucking rant. I've decided this is going to be a rant in the middle of my review. Austin Atomic, not only since last year's Call of Greatness event. Again, I'm a USW performer. I wrestle in the promotion. I've seen the day-to-day operations. on a consistent basis. And granted, I can probably get away with this. More than 95% of the roster can. But when I see something from USW, and granted, this doesn't happen often because USW is fucking great. But when I see USW with such gross mistreatment of a specific talent that by all fucking means should be pushed to the fucking moon. Or if USW just shows, and I love the word incompetence so much that I use it in every video, but if when USW shows this gross incompetence and negligence in their booking towards a specific performer or a specific program, I call them the fuck out on it. Austin Atomic finished 2016 as the world heavyweight champion. He was in a storyline where he was the golden child for Martin Reese's Severity brand. He was slated as this next big thing by Martin Reese only a few months into his world championship reign. His so far first and maiden world championship reign. He goes into 2017 with a chip on his shoulder. And he's got to flick the fuck off. He goes into Insanity last year, and granted, my fucking memory is always blurry as shit that happened like last year, except for the things that stood out. What stood out all at the beginning of last year? Austin Atomic was fucking brilliant. He walked into Insanity 2018. Insanity 2017, had a killer match. Or maybe it was the pay-per-view afterwards. Beginning of 2017, he had a killer match at Insanity. He then had a killer match. You know what? I've written down the match cards. So this goes back to last year. All right, so Insanity of last year. I always have notes on my shit. So yeah, you can see my coded thing. But anyway, Austin Atomic has a great match against Fernandez at Insanity 2017. Makes Fernandez look great. Fernandez, the guy who, after his program with Austin Atomic, lost steam, got given the boot from Severity, went over into Intensity, and is now revitalizing himself as a marvelous duo with Gringo. He goes into Outcast the following month. Has another great match in a no disqualification match, nonetheless, against Fernandez. Retains the title. This was the end of his run with Fernandez. Fernandez, the month after, mind you, this is a month, an exact month to the day. February 26th was Outcast. March 26th was Agony. Over the course of 1 month, Fernandez, while working with Austin Atomic, goes from the World Heavyweight Championship match at the Outcast pay-per-view to a month later on the Agony pay-per-view, and is not only not in the World Championship match, but is not even on the fucking card. So Agony, Austin Atomic walks into the pay-per-view March 26th, 2017 against Wolf Granger. Again, this is not me discrediting Wolf. This is not me discrediting Fernandez. But this is primarily what Austin Atomic did for these motherfuckers. Wolf Granger, match with Austin Atomic at Agony. The final Atomic retaining, or final match where Atomic retained the World Championship before facing Majigera in the main event of Call to Greatness fucking 12. Austin Atomic beats Wolf Granger. Match was fantastic. One of the best Wolf Rangers put on. Call to Greatness 12 Austin Atomic is in the World Heavyweight Championship match main event against Majigeta. Overshadows the USW Championship match, where Ezra Kills gets his much, deserved moment. Where is Wolf Granger? Wolf Granger, again, for Call to Fucking Greatness. The biggest show of the year. Call to Greatness, Wolf Granger, not on the fucking card. A month later, at Velocity, May 28th, 2017. Let's see. Good 28 days after losing the championship, the World Heavyweight Championship to Majigeta, loses his rematch at Velocity. 1 month later, Deception pay-per-view, June 25th, 2017, Austin Atomic, now fighting Capital. Capital for the International Championship. Comes up short. Austin Atomic goes into Warzone 2, July 30th, 2017. Fernandez is on the card, surprisingly enough. Again, not discrediting anybody. Austin Atomic, not on the fucking card. And people questioned that, and Martin Reese's response was, we didn't have anything for him. Ultimate Consequence, August 27th. 27 days after Warzone 2. Majigeta is facing Alexander Rotten for the World Heavyweight Championship. Austin Atomic, not on the fucking card. Martin Reese's response was, we still don't have anything for him. This is me getting angry now. Because I'm one of those guys that sticks up for the people that deserve their spot and their opportunity. And Austin Atomic is one of the worst victims, or most notable victims, of poor booking. Severity puts on another sole-branded pay-per-view, September 24th, 2017, called Emergence. Let's see, August has 31 days, so a good 28 days later, Austin Atomic is finally on the fucking card. He's facing Washington, and I believe it was the kickoff match of the whole fucking show. 1 month later, Broken Bonds. About a good, 30 days in September, 6 days, 6 plus 29, 35 days later. Broken Bonds, Austin Atomic facing Washington again on the lower to mid card. So this is what Martin Reese had planned for him. Let's go to Bulletproof 10. Bulletproof fucking 10. On November 26th, 2017. There are 31 days in October. So plus 2, 28 days later at Bulletproof X. Bulletproof 10. Austin Atomic, not on the fucking card. No response from Martin Reese. December 31st, 2017. Aftershock pay-per-view. Austin Atomic facing Jake Porter in not only a throwaway match, but I believe was the kickoff match of the show. Insanity just last night, and this is it got to the point where I left so much room for notes and for writing down a bunch of statistics because I was trying to edit my wiki so that way I can put all this information down so there was at least a column for people to discuss upon. Last night was where I filled out the entire fucking space of notebook. This is the last page in which I was writing down statistics for championships, pay-per-views, so on and so forth, results, programs, whatever it may be. So, how fitting. The last fucking sheet I have. That's not notes, just a pay-per-view card. I guess I'll have to start after the notes. Austin Atomic losing to Suzuki Karakashi for the International Championship. Unbelievable. Unfucking fucking believable. You've got to be kidding me. I've said this for so long. Mind you, not many people get to go backstage at USW shows, which is why I love being able to stare into the camera. Don't care if it's fucking rant or venting my frustrations. Don't care what it may be. I get to give you an insight into what's happening. So that way you get to take away something from it that many people wouldn't have the opportunity to tell you about. Austin Atomic goes from having fantastic matches against Fernandez, against Wolf Granger, into the main fucking event of Call to Greatness against Majigeta, gives Omega versus Okada a run for its money, never sees World Championship glory again. For almost 15 minutes now, I've vented about Austin Atomic being poorly used. Why do I choose today to vent about it? I could have done it last month. I could have done it 2 months ago. Because I was at the Insanity pay-per-view taping on Saturday. It was aired on Sunday. It was taped on that Saturday. And I talked to Austin Atomic, because he was backstage. And I asked him what was going on, what he hoped would happen, what a turnaround he could make. And he said, at this moment in time, I'm doing whatever I possibly can. I don't think anybody's going to have something for me. So you're going to fucking tell me. That's severity. The show that, for a good couple of months, made Fernandez a main eventer, made Majigeta more of a despicable heel than he was in 2015. To the point where, granted, people have a love-hate relationship with me, but they damn sure respect me. To the point where he was so despicable in 2015 that everybody in the arena was on my side. They managed to make him more of a despicable heel now than he was 3 years ago. Paul Orlando went from a random tag team, a half-baked tag team with George Martin, to solidifying himself as the Juice Robinson of USW, moving up in the cards, being somebody that people are starting to get behind. Lord knows when he's going to get the Atomic treatment. Let's go forward. Western Knight, before he fucking retired, was on the Severity brand. Was given nothing until the final couple of months on his contract, after he had already told them. After my contract's done, I'm out of here. Gone. Retired. I'll be an ambassador, not a performer. You're going to tell me that the brand that was able to make Eli Kaner successful, the brand that has now brought us such a promising stable in the promised land, to the point where it could be something we haven't seen since Perfect Destiny. The Mobocracy, whose momentum has run down slowly, but booked one of the most blurring the lines between fiction and reality segments in Severity or in USW history. The show that let's go to their last Soul branded pay-per-view. I'm in the notes. Nope. I'm in here. Okay. Last Soul branded pay-per-view. Yo-Yo Joe was in a match against Samuel North. The God Complex looks promising as all hell. Let's hope they do something with them. Brilliant execution with Tanner Wallace and Blaine North in Promised Land versus Crimson Red feud. Made Drew Akron and Chris Sanders relevant by making them a legitimate threat at the Tag Team Championships. Eli Kaner, again, is a thing in the Global Championship division. Not only is he a thing, but he damn sure deserves to take that belt into Called Greatness. International Championship fought for between Burst 9, who the Severity Bookers managed to convince to come to USW, and have now booked him like a credible threat to Suzuki Kirikashi, who went from this unknown dude that granted, some people knew who he was, but this guy unknown to the masses, leading the Promised Land now as the international champion that everybody's behind and is just waiting for a world championship shot. And in the world championship division, or world championship match, you got Lone Wolf, Chris Ross, Morbid, and Alexander Rodden. Argue that they haven't been treated the way that they should be, or whatever, and they didn't deserve a world championship push, yada, yada, yada. But you wouldn't see that on Intensity. You're going to tell me that Severity managed to have nothing for a guy that gave Omega and Okada a run for his money, and let the comments roll in. Majigeta carried that match. Majigeta's star power was what got everybody invested in the match. And I will sit here and say, listen, I love and I appreciate my viewers, my supporters, and my fans. But you're fucking sorely mistaken if you're going to tell me Majigeta carried the entirety of that fucking match. That credit goes 50-50 to Majigeta and Austin Atomic, the same way it went 50-50 to Okada and Omega. But on top of that, Majigeta's star power was not what got people invested in the match. I'll give you credit, maybe it was what got people to watch the match, but it was not what made people stay. You want to know what made people stay? The action, the story, the wrestling ability of Majigeta and Austin Atomic. It wasn't all Majigeta. Austin Atomic had as much to do in making that main event a true success as Majigeta did. Yet here we are. Majigeta is in the Insanity match with a shot at the World Championship on the line, and Austin Atomic is fighting for the International Championship in a match that everybody knows he's not going to win. I don't know. I don't know. How the fuck do you mess that up? How are you incompetent enough to mess up Austin Atomic? He fucking proved your ass is wrong. If you thought he couldn't continue to go, he couldn't get everybody on his side, he proved your ass is wrong by going out there and having a fantastic match with Suzuki Kirikashi at Insanity 2018. One of the best matches, top 3 matches on the card, tops. Maybe top 2. I'd give it top 2. Don't get me wrong. Don't discredit Fernandez. I don't discredit Wolf Ranger. I don't discredit Suzuki Kirikashi for anything. But Austin fucking Atomic managed to make Fernandez and Wolf Ranger, one man who is now just getting back to relevance, another who we haven't seen in months, to potential main event threats. Momentum's down the drain like that. Fucking sad. Fucking... How do you do that? It takes some serious talent to fuck up a gem. If you found a diamond in a pile of shit, it takes a special motherfucker. And I don't mean special in a good way. It takes a special motherfucker to shatter that diamond into worthless copper. And I know diamonds are not made of copper. It was an analogy. Atomic better do something, or better get something going fast. And that's directed at the severity. Fucking writers. You gotta be kidding me. I've stayed silent on that long enough because for so long I thought, you know what, maybe it's just a case of they have their mindset on bigger things and bigger storylines that will matter more going into Call of Greatness. But you've got Chris Ross as a transitional world heavyweight champion fighting against Morbid, who is just now finding a groove with this professional fighter gimmick. You got them fighting for the world championship. You've got Lone Wolf fighting for the global championship. Because there's nothing else for him to do. You're going to tell me that Austin Atomic is worth just a throwaway match for someone for you to throw in Suzuki Kirakashi's way, make it tougher for him to get to Call of Greatness as champion? You know what? You know what I say to you? To everybody and anybody that fucked up Austin Atomic's momentum on catastrophic levels. Fuck you. You are a dumb motherfucker, and I sincerely hope you've learned from your lessons. Or you've learned from your mistakes. Because if you didn't, and you waste another limitless potential performer like Austin Atomic, I hope you are fired on the spot. Rant over. Back to the match. Kirakashi and Austin Atomic put on what I would say should have gone on a little bit longer, but because of time constraints with the Insanity match and with Hardy and Hernastly both going to extremely high times, it was definitely shortened to the point where they needed it to be manageable. So that's understandable. And they knocked it out of the park with what they were able to do. Granted, it took away that there was little story to it. And another thing that took away from it was the very obvious predictability of Suzuki Kirakashi's going to walk out, remaining the USW International Champion, or whatever the fuck they call it. Allow me to kind of split my hair. So, yeah, let's do this. Let's find out how to work this into a fucking meme or a GIF or something like that. When your hair grows so long that it makes your penis look small. I don't fucking know. Anyway, this match was great. This match was great for the time that it was given, and I only wish that this was a program going into Call of Greatness. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is a program going into Call of Greatness. Maybe it will just keep picking up as the months go on. This was just the first chapter in a very long story up to the end of April. But knowing that verse 9 is once again around the corner, because he's made his name known, he doesn't want to go anywhere. He wants another shot at the International Championship. As a matter of fact, he went into the Insanity match and said, you know what? I don't give a shit who the World Champion or USW Champion is. I want the International Championship called Greatness. That they're building him up as Mr. International Champion, I guess. So I can only assume this is not a program, but I'm going to sincerely hope that it is going forward. And if it's not, you motherfuckers better give Austin Atomic something to do. And something worth his time to do. Because he is a performer that, again, I don't know how you were dumb enough to fuck his momentum up, but you did it somehow. Fucking right the ship and don't fuck up again. Because next time, I'm going to be unrelenting. I will lay the fuck into you like a ton of bricks. Overall, good match. I can only give it 4 out of 5 stars because the predictability, and the lack of time, or the lack of extended time that it should have been given. Either way, good match. Next match was an intensity match for the Red Belt Championship, with Anarchy defending against former champion James in James's rematch. Now, the rumor that's been swirling around since last year at Call to Greatness, when he feuded against Morbid, was James was on this collision course to get a major world championship push. Now, a lot of people questioned why it kept getting held off for so long, and if they were really just going to drop it as a whole. But I can assure you that the whole point of James was in line for a world title match Sorry. Until I came back and they had other plans, of course, jumped the gun. But that was supposed to be the plan. He was supposed to go into probably bulletproof as the USW champion. But that didn't happen, and now they're kind of building up a slow burn. But this was essentially James's send-off from the mid-card division. And he will definitely be in the main event picture very soon. I don't know whether it's for the USW Championship or just a main top of the card kind of worthy match. Only time will fucking tell. But what I can damn sure guarantee you is he made the most of his red belt send-off. He made that championship feel like the first rung in a step ladder up to the world championship. It went red belt, blue belt, USW title. And I loved that. Because if you can establish a championship for something other than mediocrity or something negative, if you can make it something positive, even if it's that first step towards greatness, that goes a long way for whoever holds the belt going forward, the stories you can tell with whoever holds the belt going forwards, placement on the card, it sets everything up very well. And James managed to do that pretty damn well, even though, he got very little credit for it. Right along the end of his run, you could damn sure appreciate what he did for it. Now, they made the most of the time that they were given. Of course, it was short in terms of the match time they would usually get on a soul-branded pay-per-view. It went about 10 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. And I wrote it as 4.0 or 4 out of 5 stars. I'm going to give it 3.5 out of 5 stars because it was good for what it was worth, but should have gone on a little bit longer. If this was James's send-off from the Red Belt Championship picture, I would have hoped it would have been a little bit longer. So we at least left the shoes to fill and continue the momentum of the championship. Went good 10, 12 minutes. I'll give it 3.5 out of 5 stars and just call it a day for that. So I can almost assure you James is in the main event picture now. And I would only assume, one would only assume that Anarchy is going to go into Call of Greatness as the Red Belt champion. Sorry for this. I'm exhausted. So 3.5 out of 5 stars. Moving on to the, I guess, the 3-way main event spot of the card. The first of 3 main level, whatever, is Chris Ross defending the World Heavyweight Championship against Morbid. This was a throwaway match. Granted, it was unpredictable in the sense of, is Morbid going to take the world title off of Chris Ross, or is Chris Ross going to continue to hold it? But fucking hell. Chris Ross is supposed to be the leader of the Mobocracy. We can get that very clear, right? Now, the Mobocracy has been heavily underused. And I don't know how you managed to make a faction that was filled with performers who felt like they were being underused and make that faction tremendously underused. Again, takes a special kind of person to do that, but also a special kind of stupid. Thank you, Philip DeFranco, for that quote. On the other hand, with the lost momentum, I feel like in some way, shape, manner, or form, they're going to try to establish the Mobocracy going forward as a dominant faction, as a faction to be reckoned with. And I think that'll start at Call to Greatness, but for right now, we can agree on a couple of things. Morbid and his professional fighter gimmick and his business wannabe chance have a ways to go before you can take them as a credible world champion. And Chris Ross is a transitional champion, as much as it pains me to say it. His 5th World Heavyweight Championship reign is more than likely a transitional one. Then again, maybe they have some surprise for us, but I would be surprised if that was the case. Decent match. Chris Ross beats Morbid due to outside interference from Capital. 3.5 out of 5 stars. And Morbid has a reason to fight him again, I guess. So again, slow burn to April. Now we get into the two biggest talking points of the entire show, which I'm sure everybody's been dying for me to get to. Again, I put this disclaimer out there. Whenever I talk about my own matches, it's always a case of I talk about it from a performer's standpoint or from a fan's standpoint, not a performer's standpoint. USW Championship, Zack Hardy versus Hernastly. The same hypocrisy for some reason. Zack Hardy versus Hernastly. Hardy defends the USW Championship against Hernastly. Going into the match, it was fairly obvious Hernastly was not going to walk out champion, but there was still that small chance that USW could surprise us. They did surprise us, but not in that way. So Zack Hardy goes into Intensity 3 weeks ago, I want to say, or a little over 3 weeks ago now. At this point in time, in real life, real time. I'm so fucking tired. In real time, what was I saying? At this point, I said real wife, didn't I? I meant to say real time, and I couldn't even fuck up my own flow. Again, takes a special kind of stupid to do that. Anyway, fuck, where was I? In real time, it's a little over 3 weeks ago. Zack Hardy makes his return to Intensity, cuts this promo on Hernastly. I'm responsible for everybody in attendance being here, for your paycheck, and responsible for you as a whole, or for allowing there to be a Hernastly, because there would not be a Hernastly without me, so on and so forth. And he could say that. I talk about myself in the third person. He can say that to anybody, really, and it would be that one thing you can hold over your head. Hernastly comes out the week afterwards and cuts a promo on how Zack Hardy was undeserving of a 10th World Championship reign. They hot shot the title on him when they could have built it more. He's been lackluster over the latter half of 2017 and did not deserve the USW Championship. Zack Hardy walks out, kicks off Intensity the following week, and granted, his promo style is building up his opponents, so that way he can, they'll both be elevated going into the match. He fucking tears down Hernastly, says, all right, well, if I'm not deserving of the World Championship, you're not deserving, or if I'm not deserving the World Championship because of my lackluster second half of 2017, you are not worthy of the fans' admiration for the lackluster and mediocrity of your entire career. So that was the burn of, I guess, the year at this point in time. And really what everybody's thinking, but nobody really acknowledges. So there is this animosity, and Hardy has his first Intensity match in over 2 years, gets jumped after winning. Hernastly makes the save, goes to help him up, takes his hand away, goes to leave the ring, feels guilty about it, turns back around, goes to shake his hand. Hardy gets up, hits him with a super kick, shows that don't trust me, when you turn your back on me kind of mentality, and has the momentum going into the show. So there is that sense of we feel like Zack Hardy's going to retain. But on the other hand, he got the last laugh at Intensity. It would make sense for Hernastly to walk out champion. So it's kind of a case of we'll just see what happens. This match goes 40 minutes. I think they told me the official time was 38 minutes and 10 seconds or something like that. And from start to finish, it screamed, this is not going to, there's no way we can top it, but we're going to anyway. You had just points in the match where you didn't know what was going to happen, whether one was going to take the fall, whether a finisher was going to end it or not. There was so much writing throughout the match. It was pitch perfect, really. From the start of the match, you had Hernastly working Hardy as if Hernastly were the veteran. And granted, I don't really go into match detail with USW shows very often, but when is a good match, you damn sure go into it. You had Hernastly work Hardy and take advantage like he was the veteran, and Hardy would find a way to kind of counter that, make his own, or get himself in the driver's seat in some way, shape, manner, or form. They would be expending energy, so on and so forth. Hernastly would take a couple of shots that would knock Hardy out of the ring, would fake an outside dive, and Hardy would take his time on the ring. It was kind of a slow burn at the start of the match, and then things started kicking off. Top rope maneuvers, Irish whip, elbows, so on and so forth. A boatload of different sequences. It would go on consistently, and it got to the point where I think it was, I don't know, I'm guessing 25 maybe minutes into the match, where they're so exhausted, and it's kind of like last-ditch efforts. Hernastly finally hits the case on Zack Hardy, but Hardy rolls out of the ring. And so Hernastly goes out to pull Hardy back in the ring, gets in the ring, and they just keep fighting, brawling, punch after punch after punch, to the point where they both kick each other in the head. Hernastly goes down towards the ropes. Hardy goes down towards the ropes and falls out of the ring. And then Kyle Reese runs down with medics or with medical professionals to check on Hernastly and Zack Hardy, to the point where the crowd starts chanting in unison, loud unison, bullshit, over and over and over again. And so Hardy's on the outside, Hernastly's on the inside, trying to get his win back. They're both staggering to their knees. Hernastly gets up first, goes nuh-uh, fucking runs through the ropes, jumps to the top rope and hits a shooting star press to the outside onto Hardy. Gets that second wind of momentum, throws Hardy into the ring. They continue to have case counter after Hardiac faceplant counter after case counter, discus lariat counter, case counter, discus lariat counter, until Hernastly finally hits the case. Everybody goes and stands up. The cover 1, 2, and at the very last second, Hardy kicks out. And that plays towards the end of the match. And Hernastly slips up in one way, goes for one case, misses it, but is able to counter Hardy's counter, goes for another case, but gets hit with a discus lariat off the ropes. 1, 2, 3. Zack Hardy wins a phenomenal match off of Hernastly's mistakes. So that shows that veteran mentality of Zack Hardy after the match, and how it proved it was essentially proving, you're damn right I made you, but good match. And so that's the case. Kyle Reese Jr. doesn't get involved. He just kind of stands there and watches, so something's brewing there. But Hardy walks out, still the world champion. And after the match, Hernastly goes to offer his hand, essentially says, "I promise I'm not pulling back this time." Hardy closes his hand and gives him a fist bump and goes, "This isn't over yet," and then leaves the ring with his championship and walks up the stage. So that sets up something for the future. And you can tell Zack Hardy, again, talking about myself in the third person, but you can tell there is a lot of writing on so many different directions he can go into. There is this feud brewing with Kyle Reese that can go into the future. There is the fact that he's world champion and he could take that into Call to Greatness. And there's also the fact of, we can tell there's going to be another Hardy and Hernastly match in the future. So with all of that going forward, there are a multitude of different things you can do. So there's little room to back yourselves into a corner there, and brilliant thinking ahead of time. Phenomenal match. Since I know, I can almost guarantee they'll do it again, I'm going to give it 4.75 out of 5 stars, because if they do it again and make it past, I don't want to be the guy, unlike some others, that break their own rating scale and make the ratings redundant. It's 5 stars. I want it to be 5 stars. And if they tend to do it again, and it's better than the second match, and the third match is better than the second match, that is the one exception I'll make to give it 6 stars. But 6 stars is only, and I mean only, for when the matches were so good beforehand, but the last match was better than all the ones beforehand. If it's a feud, for example, if it's a Tommaso Ciampa versus Johnny Gargano feud, They have one match that's fantastic, 4.75 stars. I know there's going to be another one. Second match is even better, 5 stars. They have a third match that's even better than the second. That's the only time you'll ever see a 6-star rating from me. So it always starts out at the highest I can give a program that you know is going to go further, 4.75. Because if it's not a part of a program, you can just say, yeah, that match was just as good as the last one, if not better, but this is the maximum we'll give it because it's a whole separate thing from their whole program beforehand. So, yeah, there's that. All right. Out of fan mode, back as Zack Hardy. There have been a lot of people saying that's my best match since my fight with Morbid at Call to Greatness 9 in 2014. I'll take that. Very happy with it. I told you at the beginning of the year, I'm making strides to make Zack Hardy's year 2018 better. You just watched. But, yeah, it was a pleasure to work with Hernastly. He's a great performer, very promising in all that he does, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does in the future. Now we get into the Insanity match. Now, I spoiled a couple of surprises on the show. For one, Dustin Raymond is back for the first time since 2016. I believe that was his World Championship run into Call to Greatness in 2016. Call to Greatness 10, I believe. Yeah, 2017 was Call to Greatness 12. Okay. I thought I was losing my mind. I was like, don't listen to that bullshit. Anyway. So Dustin Raymond makes his return. I guess he represents Intensity because it was Raymond, or it was Dustin Raymond with Intensity underneath, because the whole block letters of next participant entering Dustin Raymond, and it would read in the Intensity of Severity. He's read Intensity, so it looks like Dustin Raymond will be a part of the Intensity brand. So Dustin Raymond returned. Western Light. Excuse me. Sorry. Western Light made his return for a one-off appearance. We can tell that. And I can confirm to you, the only reason Western Light was in this match was because Ezra Hills was supposed to be in this match. Now, they plan these shows out months in advance. They like to book ahead of time. So it is a tremendous hassle when somebody goes down with an injury. Because at that point in time, the plans get all thrown out of whack. And I guess the best they could do was have Western Light come back for one spot. So he took Ezra Hills' place in that match. So that was the reason for why Western Light was back. It's a one-time only thing that I can confirm to you, because I know that. The final three come down to Paul Orlando, who was in, or was not in, a match earlier in the evening, which I was surprised about. Paul Orlando representing Severity, Dustin Raymond representing Intensity, and Mr. Anthony, who furthered his feud with Derek Carter earlier on by eliminating him, because Derek Carter entered number 16, and I believe Mr. Anthony, Brian Anthony, entered at number 19. But the final three, because if you're not familiar with the Insanity match, 3 people start out. Once somebody is thrown over the top rope, it's kind of treated like a triple threat match, but you have to put damage onto your opponents in order to get them over the top rope. So they have a different mentality. But 3 people start out. As soon as one person gets thrown out, another person goes to take his place until 20 performers have hit the ring. So the final 3 participants are Paul Orlando, Dustin Raymond, and Mr. Anthony. Paul Orlando gets thrown out by Dustin Raymond, so it's the question of, is the newcomer Mr. Anthony going to win, or is the returning Dustin Raymond going to win? This is going to set the sights on what happens into Call to Greatness. And at this point in time, people were putting money on Dustin Raymond. The thing that people were not happy to see was that the winner of the match happened to be Mr. Anthony. And there's a multitude of different reasons for this, but the biggest reason is that a lot of USW fans felt like this was the official breaking of the bread of USW departing from its own private entity into something larger. And they don't like that. And in any other instance, I would be okay with that this one, I'm not really okay with it. And I'll tell you why. Mr. Anthony came into USW with a lot to prove. He was scheduled with hype packages for weeks. You know, the army, the one-man army is coming. Shows up, attacks Derek Carter at the end of Illusion, and it leaves an impact. So Mr. Anthony debuts. You're excited to see what happens, and now they're immediately thrusting him into the World Championship picture at Call to Greatness. And what's even worse is that he didn't earn his shot at the Insanity match because he was just placed into it with Derek Carter. And people are now saying USW has already ruined Mr. Anthony. This World Championship shot is hot shot now. Is this going to be Zack Hardy versus Mr. Anthony? Is this going to be James versus Mr. Anthony? Is it going to be Hernastly versus Mr. Anthony? Is it going to be somebody else versus Mr. Anthony? Is Mr. Anthony going to go to the Severity brand and face Majigetta? Going to face Chris Frost? Going to face Morbid? Going to face Alexander Rotten? Going to face Lone Wolf? So on and so forth. So a million questions. But people are wondering, did they ruin Mr. Anthony because he's only been here for 6 weeks? And now he's slated to main event what, aside from WrestleMania and Wrestle Kingdom, I would say is the biggest wrestling event of the year. And people are not okay with that because they don't feel like he really deserved it. He hasn't spent his time or enough time in USW to be able to warrant a World Championship opportunity. Does that mean he's going to win? No, but just because he's not going to win doesn't mean he really deserved the shot to begin with. I would have much rather seen Dustin Raymond win. I would have much rather seen Paul Orlando win. I'd be fine with Derek Carter winning. But people claiming, Jesus Christ, apologize for this. People complaining about Mr. Anthony being ruined, being buried. The crowd was not happy. There was some cheers, there were some boos. People were not happy, and it's understandable. I do not, in my personal opinion, I don't think USW has ruined Mr. Anthony because I don't think a hot shot to a world championship is always a bad thing, or you're always destined for failure. I was hot shot to my 10th world title reign. I'd only come back for 2 or 3 months, and now I'm having the best match on the show. So if done right, you can make it to the point where they are a credible threat, and you can do it very quickly. So my personal opinion, I don't think they ruined it, or I don't think they ruined him because I think there's always the opportunity to book someone strong in a short amount of time with impact. That's my personal opinion. And on the other hand, is different. I still don't believe they've ruined him. But it's not necessarily because you can book him strong. So, going into Call to Greatness, he's seen as a formidable opponent. My reasoning for why I don't believe USW has ruined Mr. Anthony is because USW has really never ruined anybody other than Austin Atomic. And that is solely uncreative, and I don't know why the fuck that is. But at the same time, it was really his momentum that was ruined. Austin Atomic as a whole is not ruined. He could absolutely main event Call to Greatness again, and in such little time they could book him so strong that he could be Morbid levels of hype for Call to Greatness. USW, I don't believe, has ever fully ruined anybody. They've been poor in their booking of somebody. They've been poor in their direction of somebody, but they've never ruined anybody. I see one or two things happening. I see one of 3 things happening. There's good, there's better and more redemption, and there's horrible. And that horrible is also horrifyingly defiant of the principles of USW. Family first. The good way is to have him lose at Call to Greatness, despite being booked in very short time from now to Call to Greatness as a formidable challenger. Have him with uber loads of personality going into Call to Greatness, so people are invested in him. And the Call to Greatness main event is not just washed off. I mean, where he loses a Call to Greatness and has to work his way up the ladder, and they work this into storyline. And he has to redeem himself in his new environment. That's the good, that's the better, and the redemption. Then there's the bad, and the horrible, and horrifying. And I've thought, as this is, just by knowing the people in charge of this direction, this is the least likely to happen. But it's possible. Very unlikely, but possible. They could put the title on him. They could have him run Intensity. I'm sorry, but they could give him the Brock Lesnar treatment. He came in from the independent scene. It is now this big force in USW, this big talking point. They could have him main event, would be the main eventer of Wednesday Night Intensity and carry the company into relevance. And they could use it for their own boost into mainstream relevance. And if they do that, I will have sincerely lost a lot of respect for a lot of people in the back there. Because the number one thing for USW has always been family first. Back when, God, I think it was, what was it? Was it DHIG when he originally left before he came back in 2013? I believe. And so he wanted to be able to do something later on, on the independent scene. And so USW put the Blue Belt Championship on him for about 2 months. And then once he left, he dropped the title and lost in his rematch. So that way, when he left, he at least could say, before I left, I got the Blue Belt Championship. They looked out for their own. That's the number one thing. Other than marketability depends on wrestling ability and the ability to tell stories, family first. And look out for your own is Jesus Christ. Yes. Mainstay principle of USW is Jesus Christ. Yes, the holy mother of, or the holy son of the bread breaker and the angel man, the dude. He made the world, so on and so forth. God, that's his name. I grew up Catholic, obviously. Not anymore, because they're fucking psycho. Nah, I'm going to get a lot of backlash for that. Anyway, it comes to a case of the main principle of family first and look out for your own is sorely tainted if you have, by technicality, an outsider. Even though he's signed to the company, he's still not USW family, born and bred, or born and bred. Maybe tamed, but not born and bred. So he has to work his way up to the card. But if they give him the Lesnar treatment and go down the same rabbit hole that the dipshits at WWE have done, I will have lost a lot of respect for the people in charge of USW. You don't abandon your morals just for success. That may be the business way, but that's not the professional way. And that's not the personal way. So if that's the case, I'm telling you that no. That's definitely not something that you should see. If that does happen, expect a lot of backlash, and a lot of it coming from me. But 50-50 head turn away and head turn towards finish for Insanity, with Mr. Anthony, the newcomer, winning the Insanity match, really showing that anything can happen. So that's the one good thing you can take away from that, other than Dustin Raymond back. So I'm not going to give it a rating because it wasn't a regular match. You know, if it's a specialty match, I don't really give it a rating. You know, I don't give the Steel Purgatory match, I don't give the Insanity match, I don't give the Key and Case match ratings. So just let that be known. But Insanity 2018, again, a good show. Doesn't strike me as one of those big four shows. You know, if you were to show me this show at the end of the year compared to all others, I'm sure, just predicting, if I had to pick out without knowing what the top 4 pay-per-views were, I'd probably go Call to Greatness, Bulletproof, Warzone, and probably Capital Carnage or Ultimate Consequence. I wouldn't suggest, I mean, unless USW has a horrible year in overall product, I don't see this being one of those standout kind of shows. So, as I always do, was it worth the money? I believe usually the price for the Soul Branded pay-per-views are $19.99. I heard that the shows will be $29.99 for Insanity and Warzone, $39.99 for Bulletproof, and $49.99 for Call to Greatness. So that's big, especially, and there's also the discount if you have USW intake, but that's a whole different story for another day. Was it worth the $29.99 to rent? If you're a Simon Saint fan, if you're a Dustin Raymond fan, if you're a more Mr. Anthony fan, sure, I guess. Although you could probably find that on like Daily Motion. But you know, and maybe, and I'm always that guy that goes, well, it would be worth it if you liked these pros. But overall, the biggest pro, the Zack Hardy versus Hernastly match. But aside from that, overall, was it worth $29.99? Probably not. So by proxy, not worth the extra $5 to own. So that being said, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me tonight. I know it is late, and I know you got a lot of shit to do. For my USW Insanity 2018 pay-per-view review, out of 5 stars, I'd probably give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. That sounds right. But yeah, tell me what you thought about the show in the comments below once this goes up. Post live stream. Let me know what you thought about the matches. Let me know what you thought about the show as a whole. Your pros, your cons, whatever it may be. I'd love to hear from you. Also, check out my website, thezackhardy.com. There's also a Wrestle Target section of that website where I do a boatload of different top 10 lists on USW, WWE, Impact Wrestling, New Japan, Ring of Honor, so on and so forth. And I keep doing that every so often, like every week or every other week or every tri-week, whatever. But until then, thank you very much for joining me tonight and this morning by technicality for my USW Insanity 2018 pay-per-view review. I hope you enjoyed. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Until next time, I'm Zack Hardy. Signing off.